23 years ago, I had a dream and it changed my life. Now, I don't want to be over dramatic, and that definitely sounds over dramatic. And because it felt so personal to me, I never shared it with anybody except for my husband, Jared, until about 18 years ago, I was meeting with my mentor and I shared the dream with her. And she had said, probably wisely, "Melissa, thank you for sharing that dream with me, and please do not share that dream with anybody else. They may misunderstand you." I've heeded that warning for 18 years, and now I'm going to probably do the unwise thing. I'm going to tell you the dream. Let's go. Since this dream has everything to do with my relationship with God, I want to give you just a snapshot of where that began. My mother was 46, my dad was 56. They had been married for 25 years, had 4 grown children, and surprise, I entered the scene. And while my parents did their best, childhood wasn't the easiest. It wasn't the hardest, but it wasn't the easiest. But I did grow up in church, going every Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. We were Bible-believing fundamental Baptists. That meant, for the most part, gauchos, tracts, bus ministry, singing from the hymnals. With a piano and an organ. And we could only read King James Version. It was very legalistic, but I'm grateful for much of what I learned about God through growing up in the church that I did. And I believed in him. I really did. Because my house could be chaotic, he was who I clung to. And the church that I saw as I grew up was more about looking the part, in my opinion, from my 12-year-old vantage point. It seemed like plastic people. That's always what I thought. I'm like, this place is full of plastic people. The sermons are all about politics and where's God? Like, where is he? By the age of 17 or 18, I had decided that the God that I knew in my childhood must have been just a child's fancy. And I thought, there must be no God. Or if there is a God, he must not really care about us. And by the time I met my husband at the age of 19, I was just a mess. I was taking pills by the handfuls to sleep for 24 hours at a time. I was depressed. I was drinking. I was smoking. I was partying. I was doing all of the things to try to numb myself and really pursue pleasure. Like, I thought the highest good in my life is to numb the pain and to feel pleasure. In whatever form that takes, I didn't care. Pleasure was at the top of what I wanted and longed for. And when I thought about God or my past with God, it felt as though that was the opposite of pleasure. He was just a real downer. And if there was a God, I wasn't the kind of person that was good enough to want to be around him because he did not seem appealing to me. Jared and I dated for a whole probably 6 months before we were engaged, and everyone was telling him to run. That includes my own mother, and she wasn't wrong. He was a really nice guy who loved God, was young, he was 20, and he was a very naive and young 20-year-old. And I was a very angry and broken 19-year-old, and it was just a recipe for disaster. But that's a story for another day. We had probably been married for only like 2 months, and I'm not sure why Jared decided to do this or what we had been talking about, but he asked me, he said, "Can I pray for you?" Ugh, I hated it when he did this. It was right before we were getting ready to go to sleep. And so I said yes, and he crooked me in his arm, like my head was here, and he crooked me in his arm. I don't remember all that he prayed. The one sentence that I do remember is he said, God, would you reveal yourself to my wife? I went to sleep and I dreamed. And in this dream, I was standing on a beach. I was completely alone. There were the waves, the sun, the sand. And I looked up at the clouds. And as I looked up at the clouds parted. There was this light that streamed out and it hit me. And as soon as it touched my skin, this light, I knew instantly who it was. And with everything in me, I just gave myself to him, which was God. Just like, take me, take me. I felt no fear or resistance at all. I felt a sense of, I want to go. I don't know what happened. I've never known what has happened between the time that I was like, take me, Lord, take me, and waking up in my dream. Have you ever had this? I woke up in my dream. This part is hard to put words on. I knew in my dream I had been with God in a way that was unbelievable, something my mind had never even considered to be possible. And here's what I did not consider to be possible. There was nothing, no pleasure, no drug, no relationship, no pill, no drink, no amount of sleeping to forget could compare to the beauty and wonder of what I experienced, of who he is. In my dream, I was almost talking to myself of, I did not know how wonderful and big and awe-inspiring. I even, in my dream, went up to grass, and it was like a blade of grass, and just looking at the blade of grass and going, this is all for him. Like, even this blade of grass, it's all for him, it's all for him. I know these sound like words, and I cannot convey the wonder and beauty of what I experienced that I can't even remember in my dream that I experienced. I only remember the feeling and the knowing of he was the best thing in the universe. There was none like him. There was none beside him. And over was the sentence going through my head. I must go tell them. I must go tell them. I must go tell them. When I woke up, I felt as if fire is the best word to describe it, but it didn't hurt. But somehow I would describe it like fire. From the top of my head to the bottom of my feet, I felt like I was on fire. Like all of the nerves were bursting. And still that sentence, I must go tell them. I must go tell them. And I knew what that meant. I must go tell them who he is. I must go tell them who he is. Now, there's something I need you to know. Remember I said I grew up in a very legalistic Baptist church. I was the kind of person who did not have a category for this. I did not want a category for it. That in my mind would have been nonsense. But there I was, stuck with this experience that I could not explain. All I could do, because I was so immature and so broken, and I had such a limited knowledge of a real relationship with God. So I didn't know what to do with this. And the first thing that I thought of was, I guess I'm gonna have to go buy some tracts. Where do I get tracts? And tracts are like the little pamphlets that you hand out. And we lived by a Food Lion, and I thought, I guess I'm gonna find some tracts and take them to Food Lion and pass them out. I don't know what else to do. The day I woke up, and the next day, and 6 months after that, and 6 years after that, I was still a very broken human who had a long, hard trip ahead of her with her relationship with God. One that would not be easy. But I will tell you what that dream did. I never questioned if God was real. I never questioned if he was not close and near. I never questioned his goodness. And I did not know how much I would need that dream when our 2-year-old daughter died suddenly. That dream, that knowledge, that experience of who God is and was to me was like a buoy. It kept me afloat. There's no one who can talk me out of the reality of who God is because I have experienced him. And I'm actually, believe it or not, which you probably won't believe it, but I'm an extremely private person. I am motivated by this mantra. I must go tell them. I must go tell them who he is. Because in the telling of who he is, I am reminded of who he is. And as I say that, then I hear back from you, and you remind me of who he is and what he's done. And that's why we're here. I long for the day, more and more with my whole body, to stand in his presence, to soak in the glory and goodness that will be so hard to even bear. Like he's so good that the bearing of it will almost be too much. Talk about pleasure. I had no idea that the deepest pleasure I have ever felt has been in his presence. There's nothing else that can and will compare to that. But life is tricky, and I can so easily forget or be rocked to sleep again, and I don't want that. And I don't think you want that either. So we will do this together. This will be about him, learning about him, being with him, talking about him, getting to know him in ways that we never dreamed possible. That's my hope for us. I am so talked out. I've talked too much today. I will be here next week, Sunday, 2 p.m. in the year of our Lord 2022. I will be here, and I will see you then.